Bustle period. The period when the protruding rear was so characteristic that the entire era is named after the very undergarment that helped create such silhouette. After making an 1878 corset that shapes the upper torso, today I'll be creating my very first bustle using an 1876 pattern from corsets and crinolines. There are only 6 symmetrical pieces in total, so I could fold the fabric in half and cut 2 layers at the same time. I first stitched the main body together along the center back seam. I was hoping for this to be a quick and easy project, but then I realized that I truly hated my life and chose a plaid fabric with 4 different colors, which means I had to carefully pattern match all pieces just so that my OCD is fulfilled. I trimmed the seam with serrated scissors so that the fabric wouldn't fray. The hem can be finished by turning up the seam allowance twice. Using the same method, I hemmed all the raw edges on the other 3 cut pieces. Using the scale provided alongside the pattern, I calculated the placement of all the boning channels and marked out their position directly on the fabric. To make all 7 boning channels, I used about 4 yards of the 1-inch wide twill tape. I pinned the twill tape down at the center seam and 2 side seams. For the longer ones at the bottom, I added a few more pins so that the tape wouldn't move around when I stitch it down. Next, I assembled one side of the bustle. Stack the main body, the side panel, and the back piece together. Again, it was a painstaking process to make sure that all 3 layers were perfectly lined up, but it was totally worth the effort. Moving on to the decoration at the bottom of the bustle. The fabric I cut out to make the box pleat is about 5 inches wide and 2.5 yards long. I first hemmed all around the fabric strip with an attempt to make the seam allowance as narrow as possible. The finished hem is about 1/8 of an inch wide, which I'm pretty happy about. I've never been very meticulous when it comes to pleating. I know there are people who would use a ruler to measure every single pleat, but I usually just eyeball it to about 1 inch wide. The box pleat is not only for decoration purpose, but also to cover up the hard edge of the bustle so that it wouldn't show on the outside skirt. Once I secured the pleating with a straight stitch on top, I pinned the bottom edge down and went in with an iron to give it a slightly more crisp shape. Again, this is probably not necessary, it's just for my OCD. It was also just really satisfying to pull all the pins out in the end. Anyway, I laid out the box pleat on the bustle with the hem sticking out about 1 inch from the bottom and stitched it down. Since the dress going on top of the bustle will likely be quite heavy, I decided to use this coil of extremely sturdy 1/2 inch wide metal boning. First, mark the right lengths on the boning and snap it off. Then use a metal file to round up the edges. I lost my regular sized file and the new one I ordered was still on the way, so I had to go with this mini version, which kind of drove me crazy in the end. To further prevent the boning from poking out, I also added a silicone cap onto the tip. Once all the boning were inserted, I moved on to close the other side of the bustle. At this point, the bustle had already turned from 2D to 3D, so it was quite a struggle finishing this side seam. Once the seam allowance was trimmed, I could then bag out the bustle. It actually looks like a thing now. There's some extra room on the top of the outer layer to accommodate the curve of the waist. First, pin the center of the two layers together, then make a small pleat on each side and baste them together. That way the bustle would nicely curve around the body. For the 2-inch wide waistband piece, I folded it in half, ironed it flat, and folded in the seam allowance on both sides. I stitched the waistband and the bustle together on the back, turned it to the front, and folded in the extra fabric on the side. I cut out 2 1/2-inch wide twill tape to make the waist tie. The end of the tie was simply turned up twice and finished by hand. The other end was tucked inside and stitched down together with the waistband. The understructure that would help create the silhouette of my 1870s bustle dress is now officially complete. That is, if I selectively ignore the corset cover and petticoat and stockings. But anyways, I'm still one step closer to making the actual dress itself, which will probably be another complicated and exciting project. If you want to join me in this long journey of historical dressmaking, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, leave a comment below, or follow my Instagram. Hope to see you all next time.